Do you have time for a quick catch-up? I will definitely not gonna keep you long here, but it has been a tradition, I believe, to do the mid-year freakout tag or like a mid-year check-in with yourselves here for many years now. So in honor of that tradition, despite the fact that I have been clearly going through an identity crisis and a whole journey with the reading and the biggest slump, that extends the boundaries of slump in general. If you want to see more about that, you can check out my previous video, very aptly titled, "Do I Even Like Reading Anymore?" or something of the like. It's what I would like to call an essay vlog. As we're obviously currently going through a little bit of a patch with reading, I did have a smaller pool of books to pick from for these categories. But I've also not always been the best at updating you at the things that I did read, so perhaps some of these you haven't heard me talk about, although I feel like a lot of them I did mention, so if this is super boring, at least maybe it can be a background noise for you while you're eating dinner or something. I am going to follow the existing model of this tag. I do not know at this point who has created it, but whoever did, look at how well this stood the challenge of time. Well done. Starting off strong with the best book so far of the year of 2026. I have two, which honestly, for the year that I had so far, it's not that bad. The first book that I finished in 2026, I technically started this in 2025, but I feel like we can allow, and that's The Will of the Many. This is an epic saga. It has this very nice, approachable content considering the scale of it. Sometimes I cannot really do epic fantasies because I'm already very fatigued from the life and the terrors of it all. If a story overwhelms me with the terminology and very extensive world building, sometimes I just can't quite do it. And whilst The Will of the Many had that, I feel like it was wrapped up in so much character development and just really digestible prose, whilst keeping the plot consistent and going and intriguing. It just was really a great time. My sweet time reading this, and I think it was a perfect journey as well. A very fantastic ending to it as well. I think it immediately made me want to continue the series, which I did, but I would have to restart now because it has been too long and I don't even remember how I put it down. Not on purpose, it just life, as always. I'm not the only one who has really enjoyed this book. I feel like this has really sparked a new wave of appreciation of the genre for a lot of people. Logan has read this maybe 3 times now, once with me as well, which was also additive to the experience. Highly recommend buddy reading it. Was also a book club read for us on Patreon, and what a joy that was to discuss all the theories, all the twists and turns, all the betrayals. And despite this being kind of Roman inspired, which genuinely is not something that I seek out, I'm definitely not, how many times a day do you think of a Roman Empire? 0. I don't necessarily think that it's the Roman Empire or Greek retelling specific thing. It's just normally when those themes are present, that is an indicator for me that it's going to be very heavy on world lore and being battered by the never-ending glossary and terminology, which I genuinely do think this handled really well. So if you do want to go on an epic adventure, but you don't want to suffer through it, would recommend. And it's still very epic, so it scratches all the itches, I feel. And speaking of scratching the itch, I really regret starting the sentence this way. The next one is the book that I feel did the most heavy lifting of pulling me out or starting to pull me out of this never-ending slump. And it surprisingly was a romance. I say surprisingly because I think the last time I truly and fully enjoyed a romance was when I was still reading the Brown Sisters trilogy. I say trilogy, they are separate, but you know what I mean. And that has been many moons ago now. So I do have to give this book a big shout out because it was first time caller. It's just so wholesome. I feel like this is the romance to me that was done very well. There was yearning, there was uncertainty. If there was miscommunication, it was through a believable angle that wasn't exhausting to read. I just cannot deal with pointless miscommunication just for the sake of filling in the 3/4 way crisis in the books. Don't have the patience for that anymore. They were not two-dimensional, I think. And whilst romance is obviously still very core of the story, you had like meat on the bones, you know? You had things to chew on whilst you're experiencing the love story in here as well. If you don't know, it is about a woman who gets roped into a dating call for a radio that her daughter actually calls up, which was hilarious. This is also probably one of the few children written in the books that I didn't mind reading about. Or like found actually to be like additive. Their dynamic genuinely did remind me a little bit of Gilmore Girls, which I also think was cute. And she goes on a mission to give love another chance, and it is less cheesy than it sounds. I just found the writing style and the whole setup of the story to be very wholesome and engaging. Overall, just very happy that I read it. I've added a new question to this in whether or not I will remember it next year, to be continued, but I thought it would be fun because some of the other questions I have no answers for. So, again, not to mention the never-ending reading slum / identity crisis. Some of the months, especially through the last year or so, the only book that I would read would be our book club on Patreon, and that has sometimes genuinely single-handedly kept me going as a reader. I thought it would be fitting to add my favorite read of the Mooney book club so far. Now again, this one was already mentioned, so it would also fit in there, and I think this was a January read. But then another one was Project Hail Mary, and this was a reread for me, and my first reread actually, if you don't count some other stuff while I was rereading as a child. So I already knew I'm gonna like this book. I gave it 5 stars previously when I read it for the first time. It was my instant favorite book. Pretty sure it was the favorite book of the year that year as well. So unless something would have gone really wrong, I wouldn't have enjoyed it. But getting to speak to people and hype each other up for the movie, because it was just before the movie as well, it was just such a special experience. And to see other people fall in love with the story, or even hear people's opinions if they didn't love the story, it was just that little bit extra special. So I genuinely cannot give this spot to any other book so far, but we are only just halfway through the year, so we'll see at the end of the year. Speaking of giving no answers, the next question, what has been your favorite sequel of the first half of the year? I wouldn't know. Have not read a single sequel. Let me just go through all of the questions. I don't have answers. Book that made you cry? Cried this year for many reasons, but crying from a book was not on the list. And I also don't particularly have an answer for what books do you want to read by the end of the year. I do want to continue being quite flexible and do a combination of structured yet flexible TBR, so I don't even want to put books in there, but I do have that list that I mentioned in that other video, and I am currently going through it. So, filming it too, because fun. So we'll see how that goes, but so technically there's a list, but because there's a video entirely dedicated for that coming to you soon, soon is maybe a bit overselling it. But we'll talk about that later. Next question is the new release that is already out, but you haven't read that yet from this year. Unsurprisingly, it would be the second book following The First Time Caller. It's characters from the first book, but obviously not the same main character. I think it's following the meteorologist of that station? Question mark? Although there's a TV on it, so maybe it's not just the radio. Maybe it's TV and the radio. The only one that made the list. Technically that would be a sequel, so maybe we can answer that previous question with that once this is done. And the next one is anticipated releases that are coming up at the end of the year. I've just uploaded your most anticipated releases for the remaining half of the year, so that is literally the last video on the channel if you missed it. It's very condensed, but we do talk about like 70 plus titles, so if you want something that's rapid fire, that one's a good one. I only have 2 in this category, and one of them was mostly anticipated by you as well, and it's the new Becky Chamber book. I feel like we've been waiting for so long. I mean, we had the novellas, but like for the full novel, we've been waiting for so long since The Wayfarers ended. And this one's called As You Wake, Break the Shell. So excited, very hyped. I think I will be saving it exactly for the right moment. Perhaps it will align with Magical Readathon, but if not, I will just, there is a comforting feeling of saving something just for the right moment, especially when you don't have that many that you're looking forward to. So I don't know if I'm going to be savoring this or if I'm going to be devouring as soon as it comes out. I guess we'll see. And the next one wasn't on the list. I feel like you maybe should. It's called Mostly Human Resources. It is a cozy fantasy book, but it's also like a tiny bit of horror, although I don't really think it is horror, but it's a nice kind of hybrid. It's such a fun book. I cannot wait to finish it. It has that type of co-worker banter that I feel The Hating Game was trying to be, but as you know, I really didn't like that book. I feel like this is going to be my version of The Hating Game, how everyone liked that one. This one just has that type of characters, the atmosphere, and the writing style that I think I am going to be a huge fan of. So that's the 2 that I'm mostly excited for. Speaking of very anticipated releases, the one that won #1 spot for the first half of the year from you guys was this book. It's called Agnes Auber's Mystical Cat Shelter. It has all the vibes. It has so many cats. It has just an extremely appealing premise. Unfortunately, it is the most disappointing read this half a year. Mind you, again, I didn't have a massive pool to pick from, and there's nothing wrong with the story. It's just not for me. But I also felt very similarly about Emily Wilde, and I think it might just be the disconnect between the author's writing style. I can equally acknowledge that is a good book. Both this, but especially Emily Wilde. But it is a more lyrical and floral writing style, which historically has just been a big no for me. And I think I don't regret reading it. Again, it was a book club choice, and I always have fun discussions there as well. So in that alone, it's worthwhile for me, but it was just, it felt a bit like a slog. The story does follow the main character who needs to relocate very quickly because a rogue mage has caused a havoc in the street that her cat shelter was, and then caused damage to her property, and she needs to quickly find somewhere else to rent while financially not being in the most stable position. Of course, there's said mages as well. But I think it is a writing style kind of situation. But because everyone was looking forward to it, and I was looking forward to it as well, because again, the premise sounds fantastic. There's so many cats. It's just cozy. It's nice. It's nice vibes. But and it did not pan out for me this time around. But this one wouldn't fit in the biggest surprise, and I also acknowledge that the biggest surprise is normally probably for something that's a bit more positive than my answer is about to be. But my biggest surprise is for a book that I really thought is going to be my cup of tea, and I ended up DNFing it around 50-60%. And I do feel validated because I was reading this together with Logan, and we both decided to DNF at the same time. I understand the premise. It's Yesteryear, by the way. I understand the premise. I actually really liked the premise. I thought it was really cool, you know, commentary on the society, commentary of the whole pitching versus living the trad wife life. It just felt never ending. Characters that are also meant to be unlikable, which by the way, I love reading about. Even in the books that you're not necessarily meant to critique or see the main character as a little bit like an antagonist, I love nuanced characters. So it's not that either. It's the fact that for a story like it was, and for the characters like they were, I just did not understand why we're spending so much time talking about the very mundane little tasks that they've been doing. It just went on and on and on. And when I checked where I was in the book and realized it's only 50 or 60%, I was shocked because I thought it was surely about to end, and it's not even the biggest book. So both me and Logan were just like, we just locked eyes at one point because we were listening to an audiobook while driving and just decided that we're just gonna call it quits. I then did go onto Instagram and ask you guys if it's worth pushing through it because I've heard great things about the ending, and I said I will only do that if a big majority is going to say that yes, it's worth it, and then I think 35% people said that it's worth it, and then, you know, majority said not. And then I did Google how it ends, and I would say again, I've read 50-60% of it. There was the tiniest bit, the tiny crumb of foreshadowing of how the end is gonna be. So unless obviously there was gonna be more further along, it just felt like, again, the premise with that twist as well, fantastic. 10 out of 10. I just don't think the execution was for me. There were parts that I also really enjoyed and parts where I was really intrigued, but for the most part, it felt like I was reading when I was, I don't know, in like a 3rd grade or 4th grade, and I was just learning English. Give you the assignment to describe your day in your newly learned English. You know, I woke up and then I had breakfast and I brushed my teeth and I had a cup of orange juice. That's how it felt. Anyway, so I was disappointed because, you know, it's time travel, it's speculative, it's commentary on society. Those are all my favorite things in a book, so big sad on that one. And the last question is the book that made you happy versus cry, which I didn't have an answer for, which again is just this. We're very short on answers this year. Perhaps the end of the year recap is going to be different. I will be very curious to see if any of the remaining reads of the year are going to beat these two for the best book of the year, which these are just so different. Like, how do you even rank them against each other? Like, if I had to pick one, it probably would be this, but they're so different. They gave me completely different things, you know? They might have to share, unless a book that I have not yet read is going to top either. And I'm very excited by that premise, but I'm also very curious to see what was your best versus worst read of this half of the year so far. Let me know in the comments. I will chat to you there. Bye.